Hey, everybody, I'm Jody Vance,
And I'm George-Affleck.
and it's time for
Kevin. Unspun.
Kevin.
A lot of Kevins in the news. I mean, there's Kevin Falcon, and then I was watching this interview with Kevin Spacey on Piers Morgan last night, and he's trying to rebuild his brand. If you don't know Kevin Spacey, actor, but what happened in my brain? They look kind of like each other, actually. So they have the same first name, and they kind of look like each other. It's weird. Anyways,
They
that's sort of
you know
you
what?
know
They kind of do. An honest hand to God, did not think of that before. But now, as I'm picturing the two of them,
they do, but they both have brand issues. Clearly, we know Kevin Spacey,
you
who's spending
think?
who knows, he's everywhere right now trying to rebuild his brand. He was never found guilty of anything, but he's totally canceled, and that's what he's talking about. So it's quite interesting to see a person try in the media to try rebuild their brand on that level. But Kevin Falcon, we have some brand issues, obviously, with his leadership here in BC, and can that brand before the election, is it the Kevin Falcon brand the problem with BC United, or is it BC United?
Or a little column A, a little column B.
Maybe. I mean,
Just to
obviously,
put some, I just want to put some context to the Kevin Spacey
yeah,
because House of Cards, Kevin Spacey, much celebrated, award winning, and then multiple allegations of inappropriate behavior ranging all the way to sexual assault. He now has admitted to, as he put it, being too handsy in the past. Okay. Um, we talk about being canceled or not. I loved Kevin Spacey. Like I was all in. I loved his movies. I mean, Kaiser Sose, come on. Usual Suspects, come on. Like these are masterful performances. But he kind of goes into the ick category because I do believe victims, and as you mentioned, he's never been found guilty of anything. But there's this about it. It's like the
yeah,
spin that we're seeing in Hollywood for some. Oh, another one is Will Smith. This I'm
yeah. Will Smith.
slapping the air if you're watching us,
Will Smith.
right?
Will Smith. We all saw, though, he's guilty as charged because we saw it happen. But yeah, you're right. What happens when a brand is tarnished? Can it be reversed in people's minds when you say this? You say, all the issues aside, when you look at these personal brands, and obviously I do this for a living, can you reverse a brand's image when it's tarnished, or just people just can't get behind it? In the case of Kevin Spacey, it's a whole thing, and then Woody Allen, all that, and but then you look at Robert Downey Jr., who had the whole drug issue, and now people love Robert Downey Jr. And for a
Right, but
while,
he damaged himself,
I
right?
know,
Like
so it's different.
there
But there
was
was like
no,
those are kind,
right.
yeah. So
There are tragic figures. I use Michael Jackson as an example of where there's smoke, there's fire. When there's enough evidence, even that with enough money to kind of spin
yeah,
it, cover it up, change the narrative, whatever, hold it at bay. I still don't enjoy his music the way I once did, and when I look, let's go back to politics
yeah.
and
I'm
how
not
some,
associating anything with
oh
that. I think
God, no, no, let's go
we're
back to
talking
politics.
brand here, and
Brand wise, and
yeah,
I will take this is not about an individual, but brand wise, when I open up the phone lines and we're talking about the BC Liberals who changed their name to the BC United because their brand was so tarnished by some significant
homophobic mostly, it seems.
yeah. I was gonna I was
No, I
gonna
was I
say,
was knocking on doors in 20 whatever year that was, 2020, and it was painful for me. I was knocking
yeah.
on doors with my friends who are gay. They were getting told that they were knocking on doors for a party that was, and you're like, I'm gay, and I'm knocking on, like, sorry, and so, but it was there, and it continued, and it led, I think, that homophobia and that all that stuff and some other weird things that obviously happened behind the scenes, and this the conservatives and the BC Liberals, and there's definitely a difference between those two parties and the people who are in them. Although you can see what's happening now, that the wave of the conservatives is happening, so the people are jumping on board that are, oh yeah, but never mind that stuff.
But I
Never
think
mind.
there's brand confusion there. We've talked about that as well, right? Like people jumping on board the BC conservatives aren't necessarily going, yeah, I really love John Rustad. They're like, I'm with Pierre Polyev. and they don't realize that the conservative banner is not related, and there's been much work, much spin done to put those two very closely together, and people thinking that they might hold their nose on the anti-science or the anti-LGBTQ2 plus or whatever, and because they want fiscal conservatism, right? Not realizing that.
And the crime issue, obviously
Right.
And the cancel culture and all that stuff, they jump on that.
Wokeism is what you're looking
Wokeism.
for. Wokeism.
There's a new movie coming out with Hugh. Amanda was telling me this morning, Hugh Bonneville, and I think it's about a news anchor who gets canceled for something he said a long time ago, and he's sort of saying they're saying that was misogynist. He goes, that wasn't misogynist, it was sexist.
Just to be clear,
it was okay back then.
It's really quite something. The spin and the dig, like how far back in your life do you go to be held accountable? I mean, it's something as bizarre as I always knew I wanted to be in media. I always wanted to be a sportscaster on TV. I always wanted to be in media. I always wanted to be a broadcaster. It's what I always wanted to do. And so long before we all carried around, cameras.
Yep.
There does not exist a photograph of me in the nude. There's no selfie that I sent to a boyfriend. There's no, because that's
not a good idea.
And the reason I bring that up as a personal story is because when I look at some of the stupid stuff that people have done and then walk into public life and expect that to not count.
I know.
It's like,
well, when is
really?
the law of whatever the term is? So there's this interest, and times have changed a lot. So, and we were talking.
Times have changed.
So how do you, when it was okay, you think about the way our parents used to talk and the things we used to say, and if I had been recorded saying those things in the early 1970s, that would totally cancel me now.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Yeah, exactly. One thing and I saw this TikTok yesterday about Justin Bieber. And I thought, and this is literally, I don't know how old he's, what, 30? I don't know. It's only like 10 years.
I think he's 32.
So this is like 10, 12 years ago when he was like 17, 16, and he's winning all these awards. And there was women being creepy, slapping on the bum, like celebrity women slapping. Then there's like a James Corden clip who's going, you smell really good, like super creepy stuff.
Yeah.
But it wasn't considered creepy then. Well, and now it is, because it is creepy. But how do we now hold them accountable for their creepiness from 12 years ago? Or are they, hopefully, as we all have become and progress, become more aware that this is creepy? Now, you can talk about, so you just can't get away with it as we get more and more refined as certainly as a society. And you could say, oh, it's wokeism. It's we're getting better as people. And the things I said 10 years ago or 20 years ago absolutely probably wouldn't be acceptable now. I got in trouble at CKNW for saying the F word just in a staff meeting. And I'm like, huh? Because, we're being around a long time. When you worked in a newsroom, the F word is pretty much, in my experience, the second word you use in every sentence. It's like, but not anymore. You can't say it anymore. So, and that's hard for me because I swear a lot.
You managed to go 30 whole minutes once a week with me without, sometimes we get the exploit. But isn't that interesting though? I like where you're going with that when it comes to the spin versus the woke, right? The silos that have been created now, because I do believe that we are moving forward. I'll use myself again as an example when it comes to pronouns, right? When I'm being an ally and I'm being a parent and there are young people coming in and out of my house, or I'm going to places and spaces where there's, a they, them, she, they, I literally say, I'm totally down with whatever you want. I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to do it wrong. I'm going to reference you incorrectly. I'm just telling you that now. And 100% of the time it's like, I expect you to be wrong. But you're trying, therefore, and that's where I'm like, okay, so I'm not canceled if I don't do it right. But there's going to be someone who looks at me and says, inevitably, there's going to be somebody who looks at me and says, if you can't get it right 100% of the time, you don't belong here. And I'm like,
how many times on CKNW in those interviews when you got the script and you've got it written in the script in the intro, right? But you're talking to the person, but they want to be referred to as they or whatever. And you're like, you feel so bad when you make the mistake because you kind of do. My kids always call me out on it. Like when I'll forget, And they're very quick. They seem to have this ability to memorize all this stuff, all these pronouns right
because
away.
it's normal for them.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
So
But that's like when we talk about our older generation, and heads up, I'm going to say a couple of inappropriate things in a row here because these are things that I struggled with my 85-year-old stepdad who passed away last summer, right? He would say things, he would not use the term South Asian. He
right.
would use what would be a slur, or at the very least, he'd be like, oh, yeah, well, they're Indian, right?
Yeah.
About the South Asian community, which I found confusing. And then I'd say, and also Indian is First Nations, Indigenous, Inuit. And he'd be like,
Unless you live in
Syria,
America, where they
right?
say Indian. So it's like,
Where they say, and some bands here, some First Nations bands want to be called Indian band. Like you literally have to listen. I spent 20 minutes the other day. Brian was fishing up at Langara Lodge, and I took mom out for a beer at the pub, and she said, where's Brian? And I said, he's in Haida Gwaii. And she's like, what's Haida Gwaii? And I said,
yeah.
oh, it's the Queen Charlotte Islands. And she's like, well, why is it Haida Gwaii? And I'm like, well, that's what it was called before. And now, well, why didn't they just keep it Queen Charlotte's? Because everybody knows that. I'm like, well, and then
My
I looked.
sister changed her name from Helen to Elizabeth. It took me 15 years to get used to it, but I can't remember ever calling her Helen. You gotta just get used to that stuff,
You just
right?
do. You do. And that was the ending message. And also, as the younger person with the 80 plus people, and my stepdad was like, he looked at me and goes, I'm not changing. And I said, well, just know that every time you say it, I have to correct you because you're saying it in front of my kid. And my
Yeah,
kid
yeah,
needs to know that that's not what we do anymore. And that's the work, right? That's the work. And when somebody goes, you're so woke, I'm like, okay, if that's what makes me woke, if that's what, if trying to say
yeah,
they instead of she or he or whatever, because they're a they, or First Nations or South Asian, or, oh my God, I actually had this happen. They're Oriental. I
yeah.
was like, really?
No, I mean, it's
Come
generational.
on. Yeah,
That
but you got
carried
to
over. I
call it
mean,
out every time.
yeah,
Anyway,
depends on how old they are. I think
no,
that,
it depends on the company that we're around. If it's just me and
yeah,
mom
yeah,
sitting there, well, not mom doesn't say those words, but if I was just around the elder who was saying it just to me, I know the difference. I don't need to fix it every time. But
yeah.
if it's in a group,
My mom would never call a place a mosque. It was a church. Like the church, that's not a church. That's what we call it. But it's a church. That's
place
what they
of
call it.
worship,
Place of
it's a
worship. You go,
place of
okay, all
worship.
right, all right.
Oh my gosh.
I got in a lot of trouble. Well, not trouble. I when I was in office, this is probably way back in like 2016, and I said to the vision people that you guys are so overly top, and I sort of said the word woke. You guys are like woke crazy or something like that. And they of course went to town on me and looked up the dictionary definition of woke, which of course, if you look it up, it doesn't make any sense in the way it's being used. But that's the way I was using it because
Right.
the words evolve. And
Oh, woke has become a negative for sure. It used to be I'm no longer asleep to the facts.
yes, and that's kind of what I was saying. And I had to explain to them, you guys are not keeping in touch with what's going on, and it became a
Right.
language debate as opposed to
As
me
opposed
trying
to
to call
talking
them
about the
out. I was
problem.
like, I
Yeah.
was talking about something else, but now we're having a language debate. Okay, all right, that's city council for me. That's the way it would go.
Isn't that exhausting too, though? That
Yeah,
we spend all of our time debating the words around the actual issue. Like, that's the thing that exhausts me about government, which is the spin, because they're like sparkly things. We can keep debating the thing that doesn't matter. We'll keep debating why we can't all see the intelligence report that claims that MPs were wittingly helping foreign actors. And we're going to keep going back and forth on why Elizabeth May did get the high level security clearance and that Pierre Poilievre refuses to. And it's because Pierre doesn't want to sign an NDA, but Elizabeth May did. And she was still able to talk enough about it to say and then we're back and forth. And instead of solving the fact that somebody is telling what did they tell? What did they tell the bad actor or the foreign actors?
yeah,
What did they know? We're
what
not
I want to
talking
know.
about that. But we're not talking about that because we're too busy talking about the wedge issue, sparkly spin things.
Process. You know what debate?
Right.
You know what debate's not happening anymore is
What?
public hearing debates in city council. Segue. I did a little
Nice segue. Let's go. Let's
like
go
that.
there. So we can build as big as we want.
I mean, basically in Vancouver and most municipalities now, all municipalities, because the provincial rules changed. So now they're adopting the new regulations. The Vancouver Charter changed, the municipal charter is changing. So the municipal act. So then part of that thing is basically you get to build in certain areas without any kind of process because building is the priority and cities are slowing things down too much. True, true, true. So it's the city of Vancouver is, talking about this. What was it? And so basically a lot of the public hearing process per building is gone, which is something that actually Sam Sullivan used to talk a lot about way back in the day. And so some of the stuff that who was a BC Liberal, mayor of Vancouver, certainly wouldn't be aligned with the NDP, but a lot of the stuff that they've introduced are things that he used to talk about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Because the public hearing process is broken. But what's interesting is Adrienne Carr and how she's come out who's a Green Party councillor in Vancouver. I was there with her for 8 years. She was always very like process, public, got to hear, listen. Suddenly she's like, no, this is great. This public hearing thing. Yeah, no, like we've got a community plans and we've got to stick to that. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is Adrienne Carr. So it's, I just think it's interesting. She's getting a lot of heat for that, I'm sure, because the people in the city here who want process, and believe me, there's a lot of process, are really mad about this, that the process is taken away and now towers will be popping up everywhere that you potentially where you live. And like right at my window here as well, there's one right across the street, 5 times the size of what it could have been 2 years ago. Now
there are 3 in my neighborhood right now. 4 within a 10-block radius that are big, tall, and being built. And you know what? 5 years ago, when we started talking about this, I was like, why not gentle density? Why not peppered throughout? Why not lower and more lower instead of big? And now, because it's been 5 years of nothing, I'm like, you know what? Too late. The crisis is here. Build, go.
Our kids gotta live somewhere.
Go. People need to live somewhere.
Yeah.
People, I want my vibrant neighborhood back. My neighborhood is hollowed out.
Hollowed out. Ask one thing I keep asking for, and there's micro suites and communal area. I've talked about this in the show before. Yeah. Why you and I have kids, if you can buy an apartment of 200 square feet for, 1,200 a square foot, so you can get it for $300,000, say, like crazy price. But and a communal kitchen or dining room, communal living area, like a campus dorm,
like a dorm, yeah, like gauge towers, like a
yeah. Your mortgage on 200,000, 300,000 is $1,500 a month. So can we not allow this stuff to get built so that our kids can get into the market? I know there's people, rental and this and that. No, I want my kids to own their home and I want them to get it into the market. And the only way you can get into the market is you got to start small and then you build up your equity. And you can't do that on $1 million apartment. No, there's no way my kids can afford an apartment, but they could maybe find a $200,000 dorm room they'd be happy to live in that would be less than the bachelor or the basement suite they're living in Kits, which is $2,400.
That's unbelievable.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And it's the public process piece that you and I have discussed many times, and you've taught me a lot about this, is if we're spending tens of millions of dollars on plans, community plans, the city plan, the Broadway plan, the downtown plan, the east side plan, and then we're going to go back and look at those plans and say, this is what we planned on, this is what we voted on, this is what we're doing. And then now we have to revisit everything to make sure that this one building is what everybody wants. And then we're going to spend another couple of years doing that. Meanwhile, the cost of doing it goes up. The manpower isn't there, everything trying to get built now. And what was the thing that we saw today about the added expense?
Burnaby. Yeah, Burnaby is trying to catch up to Vancouver. So this was Steve Soretsky, a local realtor. We talk a lot with him on CKNW.
Yeah.
He's really good, but he posted that the cost of building a tower in Burnaby has gone up per unit by
30 grand.
Yeah, 30 grand. And and then somebody else, if you follow his tweets, there's somebody who breaks it down, but basically what was more concerning was the exact same thing I used to hear from Vision and the mayor and all those people when I was in council, was that, well, that doesn't affect the price. The costs from the city don't affect the bottom line price of a unit.
That's ludicrous. That's like saying fuel costs don't impact your produce. Yes, it does.
Of course it does. Well, what it does do, it stops, a developer's a private, business. They want to make money. If they can't make money, they don't build. So if the math doesn't make sense, they're not going to do it. Even that would be the best, case scenario. If you can encourage a builder to, even with 30% of the cost being taxes, basically to the government, it's a miracle. What's interesting is that there seems to be no way away from this anymore. And cities, the reason that Burnaby and I think these other places are adding more of these costs, ironically, is because less things are getting built. They're making less money from developers because of CACs, community amenity contributions, or whatever you development cost levies. They make a lot of money off developers in the past. So when they build less, that revenue's less, obviously. And so
things aren't
these
selling like they
we'll
used
tax
to.
them
So,
more. Like,
but the land transfer tax and all of that, all of those things are just not happening in a slower market because of interest rates. Like it's all connected.
why would you risk? Why would you
Why
risk?
would you risk? And then, oh, I'm not even sure if you saw this. I wanted to mention to you that this before we rolled tape here. I also saw that Vancouver City Council, I think yesterday, agreed in large numbers, if not unanimously, to make it that if you are fixing your home to the tune of $150,000 or more, you must replace your water heater to a new green standard. So now, I mean, think about how little in this day and age, how small a renovation is that hits 150 grand, and just getting through permits and this and inspections and da da da. Okay, so now that extra suite that you were planning to put into your mortgage helper there, now you also have to redo it to have a water heater that is green. Like it feels like a roadblock at a time where we need to remove the roadblocks. Like we just need to stop adding reasons not to build the thing. Like give us incentives to build the thing.
Elon Musk, I know there's lots of controversy about Elon Musk. He laid off almost all the staff at Twitter, right? And Twitter's still running. I mean, you may not like it as much, but his theory, it's kind of a libertarian view, is that, less is more. If you have more people working on something, they tend to just spend a lot of time spinning their wheels or meeting and talking and talking. That's kind of like government. I mean, how many more people do we need in planning? If we keep adding people in Vancouver to planning, lots more people, and yet things slow down. Why is that? How is that possible? How could it be
you
slower?
saw that about the budget too, hey? With the proposal to move some money around. No net increase to the 2024 budget, but Ken Sim wanting to move
for the mayor. Yeah, that's quite common. Actually, in capital budgets, it's really bad, and it often doesn't get reported. So we'll vote on the capital budget at election time, and on the back page, we've talked about this. You vote on, in the case of Vancouver, it's $400 million a year that we have budgeted, so over $1 billion, and it's defined very unclearly. But there are, in the budget conversations in a deep way, they do have specifics of what you want to achieve over the next 4 years. But if it doesn't happen, there's an assumption that, okay, well, we have this 400 million set aside, but it's not real cash. It's often borrowed money. Let's move it somewhere else. Let's move that. Let's have a vote, which they can do. They don't have to have it like, my age. If my strata wanted to take our capital thing and move it to a different line item, you have to have an SGM. You have to ask the entire membership ownership if this is okay. In Vancouver, nope, you could just do whatever you want and just have a vote of council and move hundreds of millions of dollars into some other project that wasn't agreed upon.
So why even bother putting it on the back of the ballot then? If we don't even have a public hearing on that, but we have a public hearing on whether or not that's an 8-story or 10-story building, but you can arbitrarily move massive amounts of money around. That's just spin. It's spin.
We didn't even get. I don't know where we're at with Surrey-Police. I guess
we got 7 minutes. Go.
Wrong. I guess I'm wrong. I'm wrong, Jody.
What's the date? What time is it?
Well, here's my
12:01 on June.
Looks like Surrey's going
13th.
Going local. She's caved. She caved. So why did she cave finally? Is it because of the ruling by the court, or is it because she's like, ugh,
I think it's because the courts were so quick to say all of those no.
Yeah.
And the provincial government going, we changed the rules, man. Like it's over. Yeah. It's like Ferris Bueller's credits at the end of the movie, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he's like, comes out of the shower and he's like, are you still here? Go.
Yeah, that's right.
Go.
That's right. Yeah. But here's the thing though, and I've always argued this, is that there's another story at play that's hidden, that this is for her, this was a provincial play, that this was and it certainly has helped, I think. And then there's a request by, I forget, Peter Milbar today asking, he wants to see how much, if there's polling happening by the provincial government right now in Surrey on this issue. And he thinks there is, he says.
Of course there is.
I want that information to be made public. Because
Good
of
luck.
course, if only the NDP has access.
Why would they do that? Why would they do that?
Oh, it's so bad that we're the taxpayers paying for polling that only the NDP is going to be privileged to.
That's not new, George.
I know, but here's my argument is what.
But don't argue that it's just the NDP that would do that, right? Like that, everybody does that. And then they pick through the polling and they only put out the part that makes them look like it's working for them. That's spin.
But the damage is done, I guess is my point. To the NDP.
Totally.
Damage is done.
Oh, no, to everybody. But I honestly, if you put Farnworth next, sorry. If you put Farnworth
thing. Sorry, go ahead.
If you put Farnworth next to Brenda Locke and ask people who came out of this on top, it's not Brenda Locke.
I would argue differently.
I know, but I'm telling you, that's my opinion. And in all the radio that I've been doing and all of the calls that we don't screen out other people, it's just regular people, they are so done with that narrative of just digging in the heels, slowing the roll. You know, it's bad. Like people are getting hurt and there's shootings and there's stabbings and those would have happened no matter what. But for there to be no defined law enforcement, working together, working model, whatever, with like tens of millions of dollars being spent on nothingness, right? And there's the behind the spin, the RCMP and the Surrey Police Services don't get along. They're not working together. Like in your head, you're thinking, why don't you just let these people work together? It's not how it works, unfortunately. We would hope that they both want the job, right? But that's also, I mean, take it off Surrey. And we had a guest on we had Wally Opal on last week talking about the Robert Pickton, history of Robert Pickton and how many more women died because the Chilliwack RCMP weren't talking to the VPD. And the silos still exist, right? And even between municipal police forces, those silos exist. So this isn't an RCMP problem or a municipal police. We have a broken system. But again, we spend so much time arguing about the stuff that doesn't matter, that, who was there and who voted on what and when was Doug McCallum and how was da-da-da and it was so-and-so and
bare minimum. She's covered her butt when the budget comes in and policing costs are $500 million, which they will be.
She will not be reelected, George-Affleck.
Oh, I think she will.
Let's mark this date where you said you were wrong.
I wouldn't be surprised if she runs for leadership of the BC United. If whatever amalgamation that happens, if there's ever a leadership next time, there'll be some interesting people coming out of the woodwork on the leadership, depending on what happens in October. If Kevin Falcon succeeds, which is still possible, we're a million years away from an election. Anything's possible. And we may be underestimating, like we did with Christy Clark in 2014. Was it year was that? 15? Whatever year that was?
15? 15?
I don't even know. Whatever year, 15?
The one I could kick a dog.
Yes,
he could kick a dog. Yeah, I think that was 16.
And then the weather vane ad came. That's the power of advertising. That weather vane ad, that changed everything. Everything. Yeah. So,
well, that movie trailer that I sent you what I referenced last week, and then I sent it to you. Oh my God.
It's going to get
something
ugly and funny at the same time. The stuff that's going to be coming out when the writ is dropped, commercials, it's going to be so crazy negative.
Keith Baldry said that Kevin Falcon's line is mainstream, not extreme. He's gonna paint the conservatives as extremists.
So what does that tell you? This is not NDP or basically they don't matter anymore. That's how the polling is looking to that the NDP are basically toast.
And I look at it totally differently. I think the NDP are actually going to win. And the only way that another gets even close to a piece of the pie is to decimate the other part of the right. The NDP are going if the election were held today, the NDP would have a super majority.
I don't think so, but okay. You think so? I think the opposite. I think I think the NDP, if the election were held today, would lose significant, and you'd have.
So Rob Shaw, Richard Zussman, Keith Baldry, all the people that I talked to on the radio last week disagree with you.
Did they also predict that the election,
if it was held today,
that that
If it was held today, while those two are fighting,
Christy
while the
Clark would win
people
in
on the
2015. I think they did. They're not the best
you
predictors.
know what, George, I'm not here to fight with you. I'm here to tell you my opinion, and my opinion is that. And you've fought with me over Brenda Locke and SPS for 2 years. And today, on June the 13th at noon, you admitted you were like the fawns. You were wrong.
Did I jump the shark today? Is that what
You
happened?
did. I have admitted being wrong. You did jump the shark today. I've admitted being wrong before, and maybe I'd be wrong again. But when the phones are ringing, when
Amanda's logging this too, by the way. She's like, George is admitted being wrong. That's a miracle.
I love it. No, but I think the ability to have this back and forth and differ in opinion and still enjoy each other and respect each other, I think that's super important. And if it was easy to predict, we wouldn't have this podcast. Because, I mean, up until the day the votes are cast, you don't know what's happening. You really don't. Because there were lots of people, and I think you included, that was like, no, Trump is going to beat Biden. Right?
This election.
Last election, you said Trump is going to win again.
I don't remember that. I'll have to look back at the tapes on that one. But I do think he will win this one.
Right.
Unless he really fumbles and or the right people show up and vote.
That's the thing. I think women are showing up.
That'll be key.
That'll be key. Yeah. Anyway, didn't mean to switch that completely, but until the and like you said before, there's a long time between now and then. Lifetime. But when you've taught me the one thing, when you're talking about the other guy, you're losing. And both Rustad and Falcon are talking about the other guy, while David-Eby's talking about getting more money from the federal government to help with immigration issue, because Quebec just got $750 million and BC got nothing. So
you know how I talk about pavement politics sometimes, or we're here, win elections by building roads or canceling bridge
tolls.
Yeah, that's how you win elections in BC. In Canada, you win elections by spending a lot of money in Quebec. That's how you win elections. If Trudeau could get the Quebec vote, enough of the Quebec vote in the next election,
he wins,
or he'll get a minority again. And as long as the NDP,
and the horseshoe, the golden horseshoe in Ontario, you got to win Quebec and the golden horseshoe in Ontario, period. And the golden horseshoe in Ontario have had about enough of the Doug Ford vibe, and Poilievre's very much mirroring that. And there might be people who are like, I'm going to hold my nose and vote for this guy again.
Wow.
Or Trudeau bails. Did you see that he said we're going over? Yeah, that he said on a podcast that he almost bailed when his marriage broke up.
Yeah.
Yeah, he almost stepped down. I know, right?
That's the worst thing about politics. It really is hard on your family. And people use that excuse to leave politics. And by family, you also have to include yourself in that you are part of the family as well. And it's not a lot of fun being. I try to encourage people. I have a business that teaches people and encourages people to run for office, and I want good people to run for office. But there is also that warning that you have to have thick skin. You have to be prepared to, going back to what we talked about earlier at the beginning of the show. The amount of, you potentially, even for something you didn't say, could get canceled for something that didn't happen. It's like, that's how bad politics can get. They can, and now with AI, like, God knows.
Doesn't even need to be politics, dude. Like, every time we do this podcast, it's like, did I say something? Right?
Amanda's
I didn't. But Amanda used to sit in the room. We used to reference like, our
make sure I didn't say something
over here. Yeah, just making sure that George doesn't step in it. Anyways, you can find this guy on social media. Highly recommend that you follow at george_affleck, George_affleck. I'm at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y. Why? There's mine. Jody with a Y. At Jody Vance on your social media. Now our likes are hidden, so make a point of liking and subscribing right here on unspunpodcast.com. That's it, George.
Bye-bye.